Good, yeah. Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and begin. Sorry we were getting a little late there, so thank you for being patient with us.
Thank you.
Yes, so what we'll just go down is just go around the room, just kind of introduce yourselves. Don't forget to hit the mic, make sure it's green when, so they can hear you on the other side. I'm Leonard McLaren, I'm the interim director.
I'm Joyce Ye, the Director of Fiscal Services.
Yolanda Mendoza, Chief HR Officer.
Brian McDonald, Chief Academic Officer.
Jennifer Smith, Assistant Principal, Marshall Fundamental.
Jim Albanese, Principal, Focus Point Academy.
Pam Allen, Teacher Specialist with Special Ed Department.
Stephanie.
Allie Schulte, Special Ed Teacher.
Mike Costello, parent of a second grader.
Jean Beagle, Teacher.
Ruth Ann Slippa at Sierra Madre Elementary.
Judy McKinley, Special Ed Instructional Assistant, Field Elementary.
You've been fighting me about the microphone.
She's going to steal the mic.
Monica Watts, parent advocate, and I also have a son with autism who graduated from PUSD. I'll give you guys this.
Hedmon Barrero, special ed parent, past CAC chair.
Again, welcome everyone. We actually don't have minutes to review. Dr. Skidmore, he didn't have a chance to finish all the minutes, so we will wait, basically be tabled on until Saturday, then we can review those minutes and hopefully maybe even today's minutes as well. So pretty much what you should have in front of you is the agenda and 2 extra handouts that we just passed out today. We'll go over those within the evening, but what we'd like to do is actually start off at the last session we were at on March 10th, is going back to the charge, back to where we had the school board of Board of Education with their meeting, and just take a kind of, for those that haven't had a chance to read those, if we can just take a few minutes just to kind of go over those. They were in your packet from last week. This one. Go on page.
Maybe we can just read them out loud so everybody...
It posted, even on the other side. So if looking at it, we could just do that way of just reading it. It's really looking at priorities, detailed, looking at action plans, also needing a vision of a program going forward, as well as to improve student achievement in a cost-efficient manner. There needs to be a real working committee that's going to generate specific kinds of recommendations. Look at surrounding school districts and how they're using their resources. Need to be accountability loop. Collective bargaining agreement, any best practices out there related to that. Differentiated pay, duties, classifications, inclusion policies and practices. Definition is one thing, how to achieve it, what is required is another. Addressing the dramatic rise of the general fund contribution, 70% is loss of revenue. Be innovative, focus on revisioning what we need to do for special education for all students. Look at resources, not in the context of our current confines, but look how we can be more effective with our resources, not more efficient. There's a big difference between those 2 words, effective versus efficient. Envisioning how we can do things differently, and the role of time in reviewing that school. Oh yeah, oh no, there's not. No, I can make extras. Which ones are these? Oh, they should be around.
Okay.
Extras? Okay, cool.
So just to reinforce that, what I take is that we should be bold and we should be forward-looking in a very proactive way and not fall into the trap of what we've come through and where we've been in the past. So leaving those obstacles and restrictions in the past behind us and really look to change a corner and hold the board accountable for what they're looking for us to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure. My only comment to that is that I think it's well understood that if you don't understand your past, it's very hard to not repeat it and move on into the future. So I thought last time we had an agreement that we were going to discuss to some element the things that we think might have failed last time so that we can be successful this time. But maybe Sharon, I got it wrong.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It was it's always been my understanding if you don't understand your past, it's very hard to move on into the future. And I thought we had come to some agreement previously that we were going to attempt to have some understanding of what had failed before, because many of us had noticed that a lot of these findings had been repeated since 98. I know since 98, several, and many forward, and there must have been something that happened, not a person or necessarily anything like that, but something that went wrong. And if we could figure that out, then we can make a more robust approach to making sure it didn't happen again. Didn't we talk about that, or?
That was discussed, but that was not the agreed upon approach.
Okay.
It was discussed in the first meeting, but we realized that one, because we are operating with a time constraint, that would require the introduction of lots and lots of data. That we have had accomplishments since the initial assessment, since the initial audit was done some time ago, so that we wanted to celebrate the successes that have already taken place, and then focus on the list that we've developed as a group, which are now what our priorities are. Because we could certainly kick history around quite a bit, but we don't want to do that.
Sure, and I'm not trying to make you mad. That's not what I meant. What I meant was that the methodologies used in audits make a big difference in the outcome, especially when audits simply point out problems but don't give any solutions for people to follow.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just like one thing. I just mean things like that in general, not, so-and-so should have done this last time or something like that.
Absolutely, and you just pointed out one of the unfortunate aspects of working with issues and concerns that were identified some time ago. Methodologies for the various audits were different. They were conducted by different groups, different approaches. They were looking for different things. So absolutely, again, the group is certainly acknowledging what you're saying, and we all want to make certain that we acknowledge, yes, this is where we were, but we also want to pick a common point for where we start moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're all here. Oh, yes.
Judy McKinley speaking. Carol Locke asked me to please share with the group that she did contact UTP and I believe make a request of Alvin to encourage other regular ed teachers to attend. She had no response from UTP in regards to that, and I just want to acknowledge the fact that Jean Benagel has been very faithful in being here as a regular ed representative, and I think it's wonderful that she has taken time to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Saturday was a big day for us. Saturday was a very big day for us because we have actually, there's 2 documents that were handed out to you. You know how much I love color. So there are 2 documents that were given to you that are the result of the work of the task force so far. Now, mind you, these 2 documents are by no means representative of all of the conversations that have taken place, but they are the result of where we stand so that we can move to the point of dividing into subcommittees and actually beginning to develop plans. What you have in front of you, if you look at the 8.5 by 11 document, these are the recommendation areas that we pared all the recommendations down to. So rather than dealing with and looking at all 34 of the recommendations as standalone areas, we've refined them to these 11. So we have administration, which would encompass the special education director at cabinet level, collaboration, which would include parents and community as well, pre-K, qualified staffing and hiring, which would cover retention and competitive salaries, compliance and monitoring, curriculum and classroom, transition, evidence-based assessments and practices, which would include RTI and access to core curriculum, professional development, and a category we called Every Student, Every School, which would include inclusion, RTI again, continuum of services, 504, and the concept of the resource room. And then also number 11, the extended school year, which though it was not a part of the recommendations in our very first meeting, it was stated that that's something that the group felt should definitely be addressed. So now if you go to the legal size document, you're probably wondering, what is this and what was she doing? What you have is what I refer to as a consolidated audit recommendations table. I wanted to make tonight a little easier for you. What I should have done was bought myself a helicopter and made my commute easier, but that didn't happen. So I'm going to take the success of you having your table. What I've done is taken each of the recommendations, they are in numerical order, and paired the recommendations with, do you remember the charts that we created on Saturday, where the groups identified various topics and which recommendations they believe should go under those topics? So if you were not here, you are caught up just as everyone else is, because this is the result of that process. So if you look at 1.1, at least 2 elementary schools identified, trained, and supported as inclusive. The groups identified that should go under the transition recommendation, as well as every student, every school. So what does this mean? The way I want you to use this document as soon as we get to that point is, as you look down the category, and it's 2 pages, you will see that I am already giving you a tool to let you know, as you develop your plan, these are the areas that the task force has said should be included, should be addressed in your plan of action. Again, through the activity on Saturday, we identified basically what we believe should go in individual plans of action. And so I've taken all those charts, all the information, placed it in the categories that you recommended. And so as the plans are developed, the subcommittee should do their absolute best to address or include a course of action to reference that particular recommendation number. Yes.
From Saturday, I have these 2 documents called Optimal Environments that are the worksheets from which I think now this consolidated audit is a duplication of, or?
Separate use. That's an additional use, and I'll
Okay.
explain that. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is actually give you tools to move you a little further down the road. So I don't want to confuse you, but it'll take me a moment to explain it. Mike.
So while this consolidated audit recommendations table is sort of a starting point that incorporates all the prior recommendations, we're not limited to just these. So for example, under qualified hiring and staffing, 4 things are listed. But if that subcommittee feels that there are 2 or 3 other things that are critical to improving that aspect of going forward, everybody's welcome to add to this. This is just incorporating the recommendations.
This is the minimum. This is the absolute minimum. That's exactly right. And we actually said that on Saturday. But this is the absolute minimum. Also, you should indeed be able to make a connection between, if your subcommittee agrees that there's another item that we want to add, there's another piece that we believe should go here, see if there is a recommendation that supports it so that we have an agreed upon document to connect it to. If not, just again, incorporate that into the recommendation that it's a best fit with. So yes. Monica.
I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding. Under the consolidated audit recommendation table, you have X's in places, and I'm not sure what the significance of those are. Did you decide what
No.
category?
That's
Because
that's the result of the group conversation on Saturday afternoon.
but I thought we specifically, like some of these, like special ed director at the cabinet level, I thought we had a really broad discussion about it, and some people had decided that they didn't, most people had decided they didn't want that, but yet it's way up here.
Actually, no, the group decided that yes, it should
I mean,
be.
I want it, but I mean, I just was trying to make sure.
The
that-
group decided that yes, it should be a part of the
Okay.
document, yes. Mind you, as your facilitator, I don't change your mind.
Okay, now that's not what I said.
No, it's just a reminder. It's just a reminder. If that were the case, I'd be in a lot of trouble during union negotiations because I'd go in the back room, solve it, and everyone would go home. Of course, they wouldn't agree with me. So again, what this is basically a representation so that really you no longer have to have as many pieces of paper as we're having our conversations. It's essentially a summary of our conversation, and it's been reduced to those categories that we all agreed on Saturday. That's pretty much what it is. Are there any questions about the table at this moment? Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to torture you, but under 6.2, it's kind of like, it's not, it's.
Yes, you will note 6.2 is grayed out, and that is because that is one of those areas of negotiation that the group said we were going to focus on retention strategies and
Right, that came from that
competitive
study
salaries.
about cut everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So I didn't want to, we want to make certain we document its presence, but not that we spend time on that. Okay? Are there any other questions before I move on? Okay. Next is the use of the document regarding the optimal environments. I want you to use that when we when you select your subcommittee. Does everyone have one? It's a 8.5 by 11 sheet. I only have mine. Who does not have one? We need 1, 2, 3.
I made copies for the people that were absent.
Yeah. Yes, it's a table. It's called Optimal Environments, and it's consolidated group list from March 7, 2012 meeting. This document, I would like for you to use when you break into your subcommittee. It's kind of a jump start, if you will, because the task force has already said that these are attributes, these are characteristics of an optimal environment. So what I've done is, you see there's a column that says recommendation number. You don't have to per se, you can write the recommendation name, you can write the heading, but it really isn't a number anymore as it was last week. It's one of these recommendation areas that we've narrowed it down to. So it would be one of the 11 recommendation areas. And because the group took the time and went through the effort of reviewing attributes of an optimal environment, it's just really, just as I said, just a jumping off point for you to have something to say. This is what the task force has said would be in an environment, in an optimal environment. So, are there any questions about the way we are going to include this in our conversations? Yes, yes, no? Great. Yes.
Under section 11, under continuous progress monitoring, I want to make sure that we are going to be allowed to add additional methodologies, evidence-based practices besides the ones that are listed here?
I do not see any reason why you would not.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The thing is, there's quite a few.
Well,
and so
yeah.
you might not want to specifically delineate a lot as opposed to maybe referencing a few.
I wouldn't delineate a lot, but I am very familiar with some specific ones that work for some subgroups that have not ever been mentioned here.
Okay.
And they are evidence-based. Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. No problem, no problem. Okay. Are there any questions? Any comments? Any concerns? Did anyone bring me dinner? Oh, I'm just like striking out here.
Pretzels?
Yes. Yes, yes. Okay. This is where we are right now. I know that tonight I'm kind of going to overwhelm you with documents. So here's another set. You'll take that one, pass it that way. You'll take this one, pass it to the left.
Oh, it's a different one.
Yes, it's a different one. She's collecting paper. Again, there are certain things that we want you to do once you have moved into your subcommittees. I don't want any group in particular to think that they've got to prepare a dissertation, because that would be absolutely overwhelming. However, what I do want is for us to all work with a similar format, if we will. And for that, I try to find really what would be not necessarily the simplest or the easiest, but one that we could all kind of jump right into, because what we need to do initially is create a framework. And so once your groups, your subcommittees are in place, I want you to, how many of you have worked with SMART objectives and SMART goals before? Excellent. Yeah, I always said that working with SMART goals didn't make me feel so smart, but it's a good approach. It's a really good approach to keep us all on task.
I think we're missing papers.
Can somebody keep passing the paper?
No, there are two.
There's two copies. One says guide to developing SMART objectives, and the other one says time-based, but it's back to back.
Oh, she got the originals.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, did everybody get one?
No,
I need time-based.
Time-based should be on the back.
No.
Oh, you've got a one-sided one. Oh, you know what? Why don't you give me that? How did that happen? See? And this is why Leonard doesn't let me use the copier. He's like, nope, Sharon, I'll do it. I got it. It's under control.
But there was a big stack, so there should be around.
So this is one handout?
Yes.
Yes.
This one.
So it's time-based and guide to developing SMART objectives. Back to
Yeah.
back.
I find that this works really well with groups who need to develop plans in a very short amount of time. It's something that just works well with groups that need to do something fairly quickly, because it gives you kind of a format to already work with. So the acronym SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. You'll see different versions. A may be achievable, or R may be realistic, but in essence, we're still talking about the same type of thing. So specific you're asking the questions, what needs to be done? Why is it important to do it? Who's going to do it? When does it need to be done? And how is it going to be done? as you are working in your subcommittee groups and you're developing plans, the first thing that you should do is develop an overarching kind of SMART objective for the detail that you're going to do. So with specific, we then go to measurable. How will they be measured? What is the measurement source? Who will do the measuring? One of the things that you must make certain that you build into your action plans is an evaluation process. When will it be reviewed? How will it be reviewed? Who should review it? It should be attainable. Objectives need to be attainable. You know, we had the conversation last week about some of the budgetary constraints in your groups. You'll also need to, well, in your subcommittee, you'll also need to consider and make list of some of the obstacles to the objectives that you're going to develop. So we're going to do that as a kind of a 2-for-1. While you're developing your SMART objectives, you'll also create a list of your obstacles. Next is relevant. Will this objective lead to the desired results? Is this supporting team, department, and company objectives? So we want to make certain that the objective that's developed actually leads us to the place we want to go. So that is also one of the reasons why I gave you that list of optimal environments. Because if optimal is the place that we want to go, then we want to keep that in mind and make certain that your action plans are relevant and support arriving at one of those optimal environments. Last is time-based. Objectives should be time-based. An example of that is one of the recommendations said that there should be a certain number of elementary schools that are inclusive within 5 years. So what we would want to do is actually, you know, if we wanted to use a date, we would actually want to call out a date. Something, something, something will be in place by 2015. Something, 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 you know, whether or not it's the advisory committee will be formed. You also bear in mind that as your subcommittees are working, you don't have to accomplish everything. Objectives can also be reaching milestones. You know, and a committee will be formed. The committee will review fill-in-the-blank documents. The committee will make recommendations by fill-in-the-blank date. Action plans will be developed by fill-in-the-blank date. So you don't have to climb the whole mountain as a subcommittee. What you can do, though, is create the path for the people behind you to help finish the climb. And they may be the ones to get us to the top. Okay. Time-based, as I said, identifying deadlines, you know, being specific. So here's some examples of ineffective objectives. Number 1 down at the bottom, you'll see decrease waste scrap material. An example of that as a SMART objective, reduce production, waste, and scrap material by 25% of current rate by March 31, 2010, as recorded by quality control and production reports. Actually, that's well, you know, IEP goals follow the format. They do. So everyone in the room's got experience. There should be a certificate of accomplishment for everyone right now. Yes. We're safe. Well, the most important aspect of that is, because you are familiar with that, with the structure and using them as IEP goals, you know that IEP goals doesn't have, we're at A and our next item is Z. IEP goals have A, B, there may be a B1, B2, B3, there may be different subsets in between, but eventually the outcome is to be met. But you have these incremental steps in between, okay? Any questions about that? Yes, no, yes, no? I know it's like I'm being boring tonight, aren't I? I'm just giving instructions.
I have the first one.
Uh-huh.
I wrote one already.
You have the, oh, not yet, Herman.
Oh, okay.
Not yet, Herman.
He's gonna put you in a
Why do
special
you insist
group
on
where
being
you-
the overachiever? No, he's trying to make the rest of us look bad. Well, there's one last item, and then we would like to hear it. The last item is, as I said, we want to also make certain that we capture our obstacles. So when you develop your objectives, also have a section for your obstacles. Again, we're not looking for paragraphs of information. In most cases, bullet points would probably be fine as long as the information that your subcommittee wants to go forward is captured. And then we can work on the refining process to bring it all together. But first and foremost is making certain that those SMART objectives are developed, the ideas are captured, you have a section for your obstacles, and then we can work on the consolidation. Yes?
So just to clarify, this piece right here is part of a process. So this piece tonight, or the next couple days, whatever, is just to put a framework in place. And then we'll presumably we'll take this framework and then flesh those out fuller, more developed.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know what I find, and I'm human, it happens to me, I am still human. If I'm tasked with sitting down and developing an action plan, it's very challenging for me to just put it all together. But I find that when I sit and I'm listening to the ideas of other people, create a series of SMART objectives, that it comes together a little easier. And since we are short on time, you know, a blank piece of paper can be your enemy. You just kind of get frozen looking at it. So if everyone just puts those ideas out and then the group works together to create SMART objectives, I think it'll be helpful to everyone. Yeah. Okay, Herman, he's got a SMART objective.
Well, I've been speaking about this for a while now, about having positive behavior interventions and supports, not only in a single classroom, but we should have it district-wide. But the one that I just wrote is implement a school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports program with all teacher and staff by winter break, and reduce the removal of students from the classroom by 50%. And that, anyways, I think, yeah, from any of the classrooms. I think the removal of a child from a classroom due to behavior is, you know, we have to understand, we have to have people that understand where the behavior, what the child is communicating through that behavior. And we have to have also some tolerance. And we have to also model. As adults, I think it's important that adults model how that child is treated, so that then the kids will follow suit. If the teacher says, out, get out of the classroom, well then the kids now think, oh, okay. And I think everything, you know, obviously needs, you know, there's circumstances when a child might be safer or the adults might be safer. We're talking also there has to be safety. And everything that I've read from the task force that met, the charter task force in the late 90s that expanded our board from 5 members to 7, and you know, some of the significant changes that have occurred in the last decade that opened up this district, because there was lots of private clubs, you know, in this district. And at the top of the list was safety. Safety is at the top of the list as to why some people don't come into our schools. They'll drive by and they see kids that maybe look differently. So why then all of a sudden people started visiting the classrooms. I mean, just because somebody has long hair doesn't mean that they're a threat. Or an ear, so once we break down those, the barriers, and we start understanding that the kid that is, banging his head is trying to say something. He's trying to say, well, maybe I want to say, maybe he wanted to contribute. So once we start understanding that, and that it's not a threat, that the kid that, we could say that this was just now assault, if somebody wants to say it is. But was it? No, it's not assault. But we could say whatever we want if our purpose is to punish. So we need to get away, I believe, from punitive, reactive consequences. Instead, gear everyone towards changing someone's behavior by modeling it appropriately and giving the people appropriate support. And then at the end of the day, you have the teachers meet for 10 minutes in their pod, and they say, these are the highlight, these are all the great things that I saw Johnny today drew. And he's never drawn before. Great. So-and-so, he's like almost going to reach his goal. And you spend 5 minutes and you talk about the positives. And then you talk about what can we work on. So those are, you got to decompress. You can't just wait for the next IEP meeting and then you're dreading having to go there because, no, when you're constantly doing it as part of your practice. Every time I sit down at the table or pick up my daughter at school, I say, Amelie, what's your high point today? What was the low point? So in a way, I'm not letting anything build up, but I want to know what was something that was high and what was low. What did you learn? Anyways, I'm sorry about the long talk there, but.
Because everyone's going to self-select the subcommittee that they want to be a part of. I'm not limiting you to one subcommittee. I'm not limiting you to one subcommittee, but bear in mind that if you're part of a subcommittee, you will be expected to contribute, participate, and help to develop the action plan that subcommittee is responsible for. So once again, you will not be limited to one subcommittee, but if you ideally opt to participate in more than one subcommittee, your teammates will be looking to you to participate and contribute. So what I'm doing with the assistance of Mr. Costello is we're going around the room placing chart paper with the topic names, and then everyone just come around, write down which subcommittee you want to participate with, which subcommittee you want to make contributions to, and then we will go from there. So it'll take me just one more moment. Oh, two more. Oh, thank you. Are there any questions about what we're going to do so far? And we need one for extended school year.
The last one, there wasn't enough wall space, so I just left it on the board.
Okay. It could.
Sharon, while you're adding the last one, just a couple thoughts. Obviously, there's 11 different priorities, and at best, there's 25 of us. So, couple things. One, I think it's really critical that we have the right people in the right chairs on this, meaning that if you have an expertise or a passion or both, really dig in and participate in these, in as many as you can. Secondly, Allie brings up a good point. There may be some that only have one person or no people. So I'm going to shut up. I'm not going to put an obstacle before we have one.
Well, I'll finish that. I'm going to pretend I'm Mrs. Costello right now and finish your sentence. For those areas that do not have any volunteers that go to it, I may approach someone to provide support for that particular area, because it's not something we want to do as a large group. That would be very cumbersome, very difficult. So I may approach someone about actually doing it, or, we'll figure it out. But every area needs to have at least 2 people working on it, at least. Now, we're not limiting your work as a subcommittee to this room. You can email each other. Start, as I said on Saturday, create a Google Doc, collaborate electronically. There's lots that you can do as a subcommittee without coming to Hudson. There's a lot that you could do. So again, if you have a passion for a particular area, if you have expertise in a particular area, please, please, please go to that more than one chart, because we're going to need you in more than one area. Yes.
I just need to know this for my own information. Last time there was a mention of, it wasn't what I know of as rapid prompting, but it was called something similar, and I just wanted to know the name of it because of the practice, a methodology, a teaching methodology. It was called, does anybody remember? No, it was something to do with speed, the speed of the approach of the material.
This sounds like a sidebar conversation, though.
Is it? Because
Yes.
I want to be on the evidence-based practice, but there had been others that were mentioned, and I just want to keep them in mind so I don't duplicate them.
Oh, sure. Well, once the subcommittee comes together, definitely you're going to have 1-2 people who may be able to respond to that, or it's something we can Google to get the correct names. Mike.
In the interest of time, subcommittees, I'm sure, will need more resources than what we have in our brains right now. So can we start a process tonight of, as we're thinking that we need this piece of information or this resource or whatever, can we start documenting that so that the appropriate parties have time to get it by the next time we meet and can be effective?
That's actually a part of you actually indicating your name here, because once we know that we've got areas that are supported, then we need you to talk to each other to identify what you might need or what you believe you may need right away. Now, to develop SMART goals, you may not need much immediately. So it gives us a few days, gives us some time. But as you go further and you're creating more around the SMART objectives, et cetera, then we know that there'll be some data that will be needed. But let's get those subcommittees identified. So just come to me, grab a marker, and then go on and identify orange. Oh, there you go. Come on, grab a marker and select subcommittee. Please write your name clearly. You also want to, I think we've all got one another's email addresses. Yes.
I see on the optimal environments that EDI is on their explicit direct instruction, but I don't see it anywhere else. Is it mutually exclusive from RTI, or can they be used in conjunction together?
EDI.
That's access to core curriculum.
Well, this is it's a specific strategy
Explicit data instruction.
which,
Explicit direct instruction.
So is access to
Is that the one that was addressed in one of the 4 school districts that we looked at summaries
Yes.
of?
Yes. Yes.
well, kind of. I'm just wondering if they would be, they would work together well. You know, when I think of explicit direct instruction, it's,
Under what category are you thinking?
this is under optimal environments. I would think that a few of these could
Come grab markers while we're
and go
responding to the
together.
question.
Collaboration and transition, they have almost half
the-
of the
There is overlap.
right, overlap.
There is overlap, yes.
And
None of these are really, there are very few that stand alone.
and I'm wondering if
Markers.
professional development and evidence-based assessments and practices are significant overlap. I mean, like, they could be
I think
the
that,
same. I mean, because to do RTI, there's going to have to be at least school-wide, staff development.
district-wide.
Right, and if it's district-wide, this might be part of this umbrella.
I think that would, let me turn this off. I'm right here. It's like talking on your cell phone and you're talking to. It is. Okay, everyone. Has everyone selected?
Yes.
Everyone has selected? Everyone?
I'm going to co-share, so I'm going to put myself on a lot of different ones. But I
Okay,
have
that's
input on a lot
fine.
of different- Susan, why are you yelling at us?
Am I yelling at you? Was I?
You two are something else.
I'm sorry. I'm the gracious facilitator. Okay, if I can get everyone's attention. If I can get everyone's attention. So I'm going to call on someone randomly to tell me what each subcommittee, well, repeat to me those things that I shared about what the subcommittee is going to do, starting with the structure of the SMART goals. So what is each subcommittee going to do? We're going to develop. I'm just using the bottom here. So actually, before you develop SMART goals, you're going to use the optimal environments list and see if there's anything that fits that will help your subcommittee to just have, like I said, just a jumping off point. You won't have a blank piece of paper. So there's the use of the optimal environments list. Next, SMART objectives. You're going to develop a list of, starts with an O. I don't mean Oprah. Starts with an O. A list of obstacles. List of obstacles. And as we said, the SMART objectives do not have to be limited to what we have, but we should find a way to connect it to one of the recommendations or the documentation that we have. If something is added, if something is added, we want to clearly state that it was not part of a recommendation, but that the group felt that fill in the blank. I believe these are the three things immediately. Remember, the SMART objectives is just a framework. Think of it as kind of an outline for what you expand on a little later. And then, after you've got your SMART objectives, you'll know what resources you need. Okay. So, the charts with the names will create list of all of the subcommittees and the members. Well, I'm really happy to see that there's names on each of them. So I don't have to volunteer anybody.
The other thing too is there are some people missing who are quite active, so
Yeah.
being able to corral them and see where they want to be.
Well, I think that's the benefit of sending out the list so that they can go ahead self-select via email. Yeah, yeah. What else? Come on, Leonard. You're usually in my head. What am I trying to think of right now? Oh, I know.
I think something, I was
Yes.
thinking of something, and Mike and I started to talk a little bit
Use your
about.
mic.
Oh.
They're yelling at us.
I think that some of these things, for example, I can't remember where it is, but I'm thinking of staffing ratio. I think some of them, if they're supported by contract language, or if it's supported by a policy, I think we should bring it forward so that the committee that we're working with knows that particular issue. It's not that it's not going to be a recommendation, but rather that we have that particular issue in front of us. And so as I perused quickly some of the ones that I was interested in, of course, I'm always interested in anything that has to do with contract negotiations. So I think if we have that information, let's bring it with us so that we can share it with our staff and the people that we're going to be in committees with.
Excellent, excellent. Take advantage of the expertise in your subcommittee. As was stated, a policy that's in existence can either support, it's very much like having a law in the books that you don't know about. You already have something to help support where you want to go, or it can be a policy that's in existence that its time may have passed. So that could actually be an obstacle. So, but if there's something that's in existence, we want to know what it is so that we know how to use it. Yes.
Right, and when you brought up obstacles, Mike and I were also talking about that. For example, our board last night had a very lengthy discussion about transportation. And so some of the things that maybe we want to do, for example, let's say leveling classrooms. Let's say making classrooms equitable. That would be a wonderful thing to do if we had enough busing to go around and we were able to say, we're going to move you from one school to another. But some of those obstacles, I think that again is something that the committees need to be aware of, that oftentimes we can't always do that because of the obstacle regarding finances or transportation.
Yeah. Yes.
I would think the problem you would have with that would be the IEP. Because if a parent doesn't feel that they could, at the IEP in the front page, it has a section about placements considered. And I know if I didn't find a placement appropriate that was considered, I would fight to the death to make sure, I wouldn't care about the busing. I would fight to make sure my son or daughter was in the appropriate place to get the services. I understand with special education, it's not just a place, it's services. But sometimes it's kind of a place too, where it's more friendly, if you have a sensitive child, things like that.
If we will, let's keep this in the context of our conversation. What we have is, the statement is actually, I believe, intended to help us to understand that there may be a policy in existence, that there may be an upside to that policy, and there may actually be a policy that may be creating kind of a practical or application impairment. And so you want to make certain that you still create the SMART objective for the action plan, but also still reference the aspects of that policy that may be creating or may be an obstacle.
Would that apply also to a couple of years ago when the board went about making a behavioral plan that was universal for special education and regular education kids that was quite punitive in nature? I remember distinctly. What?
No, just letting Mike know that I see it.
And if we think that's an obstacle, can we write that a plan?
If your subcommittee believes that that is an obstacle, certainly put that in your list
Well,
of
some
obstacles.
of them may not even have a copy of the policies. They may not even know where to look.
Well, that's actually why we were saying if you have an expertise in an area or you have resources, maybe copies of documents,
You guys change that all
bring
the
those
time.
to the subcommittee. Bring that to the attention of your subcommittee.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
I just want to draw us back to the comments the board made when they approved this task force and being high expectations for us to really deliver a different way of doing things and a revisioning of things. And so, two comments, Yolanda, when you're mentioning that there are obstacles, right, either contractual stuff or transportation or financial things, and then I agree with you, Monica, that IEPs may be an obstacle in terms of moving students around for equitableness. What I would like to bring to the table is let's not limit ourselves by any of these things, because ultimately, if we do our job right, if this collective group does its job right, we will put in place a program that everybody will buy into, meaning that every student, every school means that students are going to the school of their geographic area. We will not have a transportation issue at all because there won't theoretically be a need for buses at all. IEPs, yes, currently parents, I can anticipate, will not want to move their student from one school to another necessarily. But if we have an every student, every school policy where there's complete buy-in and the system's in place and everybody's collaborative, it won't be an issue to get parents to move and get that IEP thing done. So all I'm saying is, yes, big hurdles right now, put them out there, acknowledge it, but let's not limit that in terms of what we propose, because all of these are interconnected. And again, if we do our job right, we will solve it all in the process.
During a side conversation, it was noted that there's overlap, because there's not one of these issues that stands alone on its own. It has relation to something else in here, but there's an aspect of it that needs to be in place in order for it to impact the other areas. We were discussing the EDI. In order for people to understand what EDI is and how to use it as a strategy, we've got to introduce it, have professional development so that strategies can be developed and then pushed out, and then that requires collaboration to support, and then you then have parents involved and community involved. So it has a starting point, and that's what we want to, wherever that starting point is, that's what I refer to as the best fit. Herman.
Clearly, every committee is not going to have a someone that knows the contract, the labor agreement, and I can think of but to read it and to know as you're coming up with ideas, what's in the way of implementing a barrier, yes. And I'm thinking, IEPs, and I know I've talked to you, Tony, at your district, where you work, there's an agreement within in the contract where teachers are able to stay. It's in the contract where they can stay after school to be in IEPs.
If you look at the UTP agreement.
Is your mic on?
Yeah. If you look at their agreement, the language is kind of vague in this regard, because there is something that specifically states that although the working day is 8 to 3, whatever the specific language was, that there is a kind of an unwritten expectation for it to go more. That needs to be more specific for the teachers here so that they know, well, does that mean yes, this is an obligation, or no, this is not an obligation? And you might want to just kind of revisit that one, because especially in regards to any teacher that's being asked to stay, to stay late. For example, for myself, trying to make an IEP in the daytime's not possible. So, we run into frequently into challenges in trying to have a meeting with the team outside of the working hours that are designed. And the language is very vague in what it's and also it's not my place to say either way. So it strikes me as not being specific enough for an administrator to be able to step in and say, actually, this is an obligation. And it's vague enough to say, well, maybe it's not.
And my intent was not to go into the details right now of the language in the contract, but that being an example of something that we might...
That's an obstacle.
We might want to bring forth an idea that...
Would bring
because
clarity.
every time you remove a teacher from a classroom, then all the other kids are suffering in that classroom because they don't... you bring in a sub. Does the sub know the IEPs for all these other kids? So there are consequences when you remove a teacher out of classroom for a meeting, and so we need to think. We need to think of alternatives where kids are less impacted, and then where all the anyways. So we don't know the barriers, and so when we say if a group comes up and says, well, we would like aides, one-on-one aides or classroom aides to be in the IEP. Well, then we would need somebody in the district to say, well, aides don't come to IEPs because then they would work beyond the hours that we have designated, which means then we got to pay them benefits, which then mean, and that I think needs to surface so that we can make the decision, because in the end, what is best, how important is it to have that aide in an IEP when they're with the child the whole day, they know the behaviors, and yet the aides are not participating in the dialogue when coming up with goals, when determining what the plan's going to be. And so we need to know all the obstacles, what's in the way, and what would we need to do in order for that aid, if we find that valuable, which I think many parents would say that it is valuable. Do we give them a day off later in the week so they can attend IEPs? Do we give them 2 days off a month? What do we do?
Well, that would be, again, if that's one of the areas in the subcommittee that you're working with, you want to bring that forward, communicate what you believe needs. One of our SMART objectives should be, and then describe what you believe it should be, and then work with your subcommittee about identifying the obstacles. If the expertise does not exist within your subcommittee, certainly reach out to Leonard so that he can point you in the right direction for where you might go. Maybe there's some general ed teachers who have said, hey, I'll be a contact, I'll answer questions for any of the subcommittees, that kind of thing. I mean, we've already started the reaching out, just no responses as of yet, but I don't want any subcommittees to feel stuck because they may not have what they believe to be a representative resource within their group, but certainly, Leonard can, if you send the question, he can certainly at least point you in the right direction. Also bear in mind, we don't have an open-ended time frame on this. I mean, we are a living, breathing SMART objective. We have a time-based concern that we have to address. So knowing that, there are people that I'm certain who would be willing to be resources for that period of time. Yes.
I have a question also about the professional development. Now, I don't know if the district has already something, a questionnaire or something that they've already administered to teachers and staff that could be shared, that shows where in this area where it would impact special education they feel is something of value and importance, things that the teachers themselves who are a huge part of this, what they need, what are they looking for in professional development, because we can certainly talk about it, but is there, and if there's not one, maybe that should be where we start, looking at.
I think you asked this fine gentleman that question, and if there is not such, maybe one of the SMART objectives is you survey the teachers.
Right, because certainly we want to get them on board if they're the most,
Right, remember,
most important.
we don't have to climb the mountain all at one time, but we should be creating the path to get there. So one of the objectives, as I said, could be develop a survey.
Right.
Here then.
I'm willing to, get 29 CD-ROMs of the policies and the things that have changed over the years so everybody can have one, if that helps, just because I think it's kind of almost insane to think that you can't understand the impact, that without understanding the impact the board's policies has on what it is that the department can do. You almost need that kind of information, and where it can be searchable, where you can.
Is it not available online?
It is available online, but a lot of people don't do that. I think.
I
think just nerdy people like me don't read it.
As a task force, that's part of our job.
Oh, okay.
Our job is to research.
All right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I am willing to do that if that's necessary, or print some key areas, and I have a laser printer like you guys do, and I can print it for free.
I would recommend, rather than making CD-ROMs, maybe you just send the link to everyone.
Okay.
Low-cost alternative.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we should follow what Mike said and just focus on what we think we need to do, and then whatever obstacles we come up with after that, we need to talk about it within our subcommittees and find solutions. I think for time constraints, we need to move on.
That being said, we want to all be aware of the dates that we are constrained by. So here we are. I'm cheating, I have lines. We meet the 17th. 17th. Okay. No.
17th is 9 to 1 on 17th. Sorry.
You're confusing me. Don't do that. Okay. What is our goal is to have at least a framework to submit. Is that correct? Again, not filling in all of the detail, but at least to have some SMART objectives that we want to share. Initially, what is that date that they must be submitted?
Well, we also have our next meeting on the 21st as well.
At 6 to 9.
6 to 9.
Okay, so working backwards, what is the date that any docs to be reviewed must be submitted?
I think it's the first week of April, if I remember correctly. I have to go check on it.
Would that include any other methodologies?
We're talking about our SMART objectives. We're not talking about having fully fleshed everything out.
No, I didn't mean that. I just thought before people gave you things, and then before people gave you methodologies, and then you decided whether or not to distribute them, and I just wanted to know, should I send things like that to you first, and then you decide whether or not they're,
No, that would be a conversation within your subcommittee, that you want these to be contributed as part of the evidence-based practices and assessments group.
All right, thanks.
The first week of April, spring break.
So, no, the week after.
Okay.
spring break, yeah.
Okay, so that puts us, what, the week of the 16th? Can anyone phone have a calendar on it?
April 9th is a Monday.
Would be the Wednesday after spring break?
So that's,
Or the Saturday?
Probably the 11th.
come on, people, get those calendars working. So,
Today's the 11th.
the 11th.
Yeah.
Okay. What needs to occur by the 11th?
I think everything has to be done. I think it's the 13th is when we have to turn everything in for the agenda.
Okay, so this would be our SMART objectives. Okay. So by April 11th would be, at minimum, our SMART objectives and our list of obstacles, at a minimum. Between there, we have Saturday, we have March 21st, and again, once we get the list of the subcommittees out, you can talk to each other at will. But between here and here, we'll need to make certain that those documents are at least prepared. And at some point in between, at least the meeting before this one, we'll want to talk to each other to make certain that, there are other groups. If you've got some input, if you want to have some feedback from another subcommittee about any of the SMART objectives that you've developed, you've got an ample opportunity as well in between. Mike.
2 questions. One of our objectives, our deliverables, is an immediate action plan for first day of school, 2012, 2013. So I would pose the question to Dr. McDonald and anybody else who's appropriate to answer this question. When is, forgetting about the board report for 1 second, when is the cutoff date for us to say we need to do this by 2012, 2013 to give the staff, the administration and the staff, time to act upon that?
Obviously, it would depend on whether there's a cost involved or not in terms of the implementation. But I would say that by the end of May to early June, because we would want to use the summer to plan for implementation for the start of the school year.
Okay, so
That's
2 questions.
Yolanda.
One, the answer to that one is, so looking beyond the board, knowing that we have a May 1st ideally cutoff to give time to put whatever those immediate action plans are into place. Number 2, being smart, what's realistic, acknowledging that 411 is our minimum to come up with SMART objectives. I don't necessarily want to set a low barrier either, a low hurdle, meaning that if we can try to be a little bit more aggressive, then we might be a little bit more further along and be more productive at the board report on the 24th or whenever that is.
I agree. Can we do that? Can the task force do that? Can you go beyond your SMART objectives and actually have some detail, some evidence to go along with those SMART objectives? And by evidence, I don't mean presenting completed work. I mean evidence as in these are the steps that we believe should be taken, and this will get us to where we want to be. Okay?
Sharon, so there's almost a template that you can fill in.
Yeah, in fact, because I love creating tables and templates so much, I'll create one to make it kind of a worksheet for each group. And then basically you'll fill it in and just make as many copies as you need or whatever you need to do. And you'll fill it in with your objectives, with the evidence that Mike was talking about, as well as your obstacles, and then also an area for your resources. If I email it, if the subcommittees identify one kind of central person, then that person can compile them. Or one possibility is I can go in and create Google Docs for each subcommittee. How do you feel about that? Okay.
I was checking on the dates. If we want to present on April 24th, we actually have to have everything in by April 9th.
Okay.
That includes all handouts, reports, anything. The next board meeting after that is May 8th, and we would have actually until April 23rd to get everything in. And I mean, once everything's in, we can't change anything. So basically, if we want to do the 429, basically everything would have to be done before we leave for spring break and submitted. I'm seeing this one, and I'm seeing this one.
It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag.
You know what else is due before spring break is elementary report cards. So those of us who are elementary teachers are going to be really bogged down.
So do we focus on the May 8th board date then? May 8th, okay. I'm sorry, what is that submission date, completion date?
423.
423. Okay. Okay, 4/23 is our date. All right. Are there any questions about, are there any questions about what we're doing? Any questions? For simplicity's sake, I want you to understand, I'm basically going to invite everyone to have access to the Google Docs, because it will take me just a very long time to do separate invites for 11 different documents. So I'm going to open it up for everyone. You know your subcommittee, and you work with your subcommittee. All right?
Will the Google Docs just be open? So you just log into them, or will you need to send out invitations for each one?
I'll need to send out invitations. Yeah, that's why I was saying it would be time consuming for me to do 11 different versions. Yeah. The only other option is I send everyone a template and you kind of just go back and forth with each other. And she's like, no, Google. Okay, Google it is.
We can do a lot more information on Google, right? Like links and different.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, are there any other questions? Any concerns before we go? Because I don't have anything else for us to take care of tonight. Oh, I know you're like, I can see my family. That my family can see me. All right, well, I've got a lot of work to do before Saturday. So I want to thank you all. Thank you again for being forgiving for my tardiness. And have a good evening.